When we think about major national change, our minds usually jump to images of loud protests, of conflict. But what if the most effective path to sovereignty wasn't about a clash of arms at all? What if it was found in a unified, powerful silence? Today, we're diving into a fascinating blueprint for nonviolent change in Iran. It's called the Third Way, and it's a strategy built on quiet preparation, not loud confrontation.
So, a lot of the time, the conversation about Iran's future gets boiled down to what our source material calls a really limited choice. It's often presented as this unavoidable battle between two opposing forces, but forces that are maybe more similar than they appear.
And here they are. On one side, you've got the current ruling theocracy. On the other, you have calls for armed resistance. Now, the core argument here is that both of these are basically warrior paradigms. They both run on the same operating system of force and control. And the real danger? This just traps a nation in a brutal cycle of violence that doesn't lead to freedom, but just another form of tyranny.
Okay, so the whole point is to break that cycle completely. And to do that, you have to step outside of that warrior framework entirely and look for a different set of principles. Principles that are actually foundational to the civilization itself. And this is where the third way comes in. It's not defined by what it's fighting against, but by what it's building. It's a strategic path of, creative construction. It uses nonviolent power to reclaim sovereignty by just rejecting both of those old destructive options. And get this isn't some new idea cooked up last week. It's deeply rooted in the ancient Persian philosophy of Asha. Think of Asha as truth, as cosmic order, as the natural way of things. So this isn't just a political tactic. It's a powerful assertion of a deep cultural identity. It's about going back to civilizational roots to build a whole new social contract.
So, you might be asking, how does this beautiful philosophy actually work in the real world? Well, the source argues that victory isn't won on the streets during a confrontation. No, it's secured long before that, during a phase of quiet, careful preparation called the inevitable buildup. Okay, this is where the strategy gets really clever. I want you to picture a naval blockade. Its power doesn't come from firing cannons. It comes from its mere presence, just sitting there, cutting off resources. The strategy here is for the people to create their own internal blockade, a nationwide state of complete readiness. And it happens through these really practical, decentralized actions. We're talking about families quietly stocking up on essentials, food, medicine, shifting their spending away from state-run markets, creating their own small neighborhood-based storage networks. Every single one of these actions pulls economic energy away from the regime, slowly and quietly weakening its very foundation.
Now, all this mass preparation, it creates a huge, paralyzing problem for the authorities. Because all of a sudden, the simple human act of providing for your family becomes an act of political defiance. And this forces the regime into an absolutely impossible position. I mean, really think about that for a second. What is a regime supposed to do when millions of its citizens are just stocking their pantries? Any move they make, any crackdown, risks making them look both incredibly paranoid and totally powerless at the same time.
And this is the beauty of this strategic trap. The regime has to try and make normal, responsible preparations seem like a crime, right? Label it hoarding. But if they start attacking people for buying food, they just broadcast their own fear to the entire world. And for the security forces on the ground, it's a huge moment of realization. There's no way they can control the basic life logistics of 80 million people. The occupiers starts to see that maybe, just maybe, negotiation is their only way out.
So after that whole build-up phase is complete, the country has reached this state of total preparedness. And the climax of the entire movement, it's not a loud call to action. It's a call to non-action, a moment of absolute, profound stillness. On a specific, appointed day, there are no protests, no marches, no shouting. Instead, the entire nation just stops. The engines of the state grind to a halt for a very simple reason. Nobody shows up to run them. That stillness, that is the victory. It's the ultimate proof that sovereignty has been reclaimed. Power has already shifted back to the people, not through violence or force, but through a collective, unified, and silent withdrawal of their consent. So, from this incredible position of undeniable strength, what's the next step? It's not about revenge. It's about resolution. The source proposes a peaceful, diplomatic off-ramp for the old regime, one that ensures a stable transition for everyone.
It's called the Vatican City Solution. Here's how it would work. The clergy would be offered a religious sanctuary, maybe in a holy city like Qum, where they can continue their spiritual practice. But, and this is the key, they relinquish all political and governmental power. It provides a civilized exit, a dignified retreat that allows the nation to move forward without getting trapped in a new cycle of retribution.
And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful question. This whole framework, it suggests a massive paradigm shift in how we even think about revolution. It's about moving away from all the noise and fury of conflict and toward the quiet strength of organized unity. It asks us to seriously consider if true lasting sovereignty can be achieved not with a bang, but with a collective, deafening silence.